Nigel, absolutely amazing to have you here. I cannot tell you how amazing that feels, especially from a point of view that, you know, we don't get to meet everyone because there's just so many in the ex-forces enterprise family now. But tell me, what made you join the armed forces, and where I'm now transitioning in. I'm just become a reservist.
Oh wow.
So that was a lifelong ambition for me to be part of the army. But you joined the army, and what was that like? I mean, what made you do that?
So I was 18 years old. I went to join the RAF as a firefighter, and they said the waiting list was about 18 months. So I went round the corner to the Army Careers Office and thought, well, I'll try and be a military police officer.
Yeah.
So I went in and told him about it, and the bloke said to me, and I'm a good friend with the recruiting sergeant now, funny enough, he said to me, yeah, you've got to do an application test, blah blah blah. So I done the test. At the time it was back when you were pen and pencil, pen and paper, that wasn't on a computer, 1991, and he said, you've met the required standard to be a police officer, military policeman, but what you want to do is you want to join your local regiment and then you transfer across. Well, that doesn't happen once you're in. So I didn't really know what I was doing, and I joined my local infantry regiment.
Right.
1st Battalion of the Royal Anglian Regiment, but actually that wasn't a bad thing because I never transferred to the military police. So I done my role, but I was 18 or 17 and a half when I signed the line. Went in when I was 18. Very nervous and apprehensive about what was happening because I had an uncle who was ex-armed forces, and my family had done a sweepstake on how long I'd last in training, and I think that gave me the motivation to, at the time it was 21 weeks basic training, to finish that. And I did, and and I passed out in the July of 92.
Right.
So that was and it's just something I wanted to do. I don't know where the desire come from. I was at Tesco's at the time as a trainee manager.
Right.
Working on all the departments and learning how to run all the departments.
Yeah.
And one day I thought, I just want to join the forces. I just want to get out of this.
Great.
And that's what happened.
Yeah. And how long did you serve then?
12 and a half years.
12 and a half years.
Yeah.
Wow,
so,
that's quite an incredible amount of time as well. So
I signed what was called open engagement, so I signed for 3 years initially, then it's the 12 months notice. And I got to my just over my 11-year point, and I decided I've got a young family, that was my time to leave. I wasn't really pushing myself for promotion or anything like that. I was a bit of a character in my regiment. I used to play a lot of sport and I was a character. That's the best way, but a positive character.
So being in the army, and there must have been some highs and some lows, and you know, what were the highs?
I think I had many highs. Meeting some of the people that I still am friendly with is a high, because I joined a platoon. I was in the Corps of Drums, so we were machine gunners. But ceremonial duties, you would do drumming. And some of the guys out of the drums platoon, I actually met at football 2 weeks ago. One of the guys come down from Doncaster, and we all got together, and that was just like we hadn't seen each other for like years, some of us. But actually it was like we'd seen him yesterday, and that's a real family link.
The camaraderie of the armed forces is actually something that is so powerful, and you know, when I've spoken to a lot of our beneficiaries and people who are in the armed forces and have transitioned out, it's one of the things that they say is that they miss the most is that sense of belonging and being part of, you know, you just watch out for each other.
You look at it and there's this bit of a tongue-in-cheek brothers in arms, and it doesn't matter if you're male or female. That's quite true, and I think it's becoming more apparent now because of the veterans network is starting to get a little bit of profile, not enough profile, but it is. And I've said this the other week, we're sort of 20 years behind America, Canada and so on, but you are brothers in arms, and it's just a link you can't forge with anyone else. Yeah,
and it's such an important part just for society, full stop, to have that, because, you know, I think one of the things that is when I started Ex-Forces Enterprise, I spent a year looking at different models, and the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, they've given out billions and billions of pounds worth of microfinancing to countries where they don't have the infrastructure like we do in the UK. We're really lucky for that. But yet they've got a high success rate of microfinancing, generally speaking, than what we do here in the UK. And one of the reasons behind that is that the community engagement is so important. You know, people look after their, children to, if you want a hand, let me help you out, all of that sort of stuff. And that's something that is so powerful within the armed forces, because that's sort of indoctrinated, I've
got an example from 3 weeks ago. I took the coffee project to my regimental gathering in Duxford in Cambridgeshire, and I took my daughter to help out. My daughter's got a little part-time job with Starbucks, barista, so I can utilise her skills with the coffee project, which is great.
Great thinking.
I pay her and stuff because you've got to. And I was talking to people. She done sort of all the serving on the van. And when we were going home, she said to me, and this is the first time my daughter or my son had said something. She said, "I can see why you want to stay in touch with the armed forces." And I was like, "Really?" She said, "That was interesting to watch you network." And she's seen me when I've been really down and poorly and with my mental health. And for her to say that, I think is quite amazing and quite powerful.
Especially at being your daughter as well.
Yeah.
Nigel, you've just touched on something, and I hope you don't mind talking about it, because I really genuinely, you are such an inspiration. And you are. And you mentioned about the mental health, and I know that you suffered with PTSD. Do you want to just talk about that a little bit? And
So take a deep breath. I've been diagnosed with PTSD. Like we've discussed, I do have some poor days, but I have good days as well, and I balance them out, and I think the project helps me to balance them out as well. What happened was I left the armed forces, and I believe I probably had PTSD then, but we didn't know it didn't exist then as it is now, because I left the armed forces and my marriage at the time broke down where my young kids were there, and it's because that trauma of leaving the forces probably didn't help me. But I was fortunate enough to get a career within the prison service, so that family bond came back again. But I've done 12 years in the prison service, and I used to play lots of rugby in the community, and I used to play for the national prison team, and been all over the world to play. It's brilliant. But when you play these big sports, you get big injuries, unfortunately, and I had a quite a bad shoulder injury, but I kept playing for a number of years. I kept trying to repair and getting on with it, and I hit a point that my head of my humerus was really in a bad shape, and I was told I needed a shoulder replacement. Very young to have it, but because of the pain I was experiencing, the doctor at the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital said, "Look, I'll do it. I think I need to do it." And this was 5 years ago, September. So I had the shoulder replacement on September the 18th, and I don't forget that day, because I believe that's the day my life changed. For some reason, that sticks in my mind. So had that replacement. And then 6 to 8 weeks later, about 6 weeks later, my father all of a sudden passed away. His health deteriorated considerably over the period of 24 hours. They'd done an operation, and unfortunately he passed away on the table, but they got him into an induced coma, but he never really come out of it. So that happened. And then in the December, I was retired from the prison service, so I was given medical retirement. Now at the 41, I was like, get in there, I've got a pension. Do you know what I mean? Because I commuted my army pension into the civil service. Thought this was a result, having a pension at 41, but actually it was probably the biggest. It wasn't a wrong decision, because there's so much good come out of that now, but at the time it was probably the biggest life decision I made, which finally tipped the balance with me. So I left the prison service, and had a bit of money in the bank, was enjoying times, but I was actually just sitting there not doing a lot, wasn't focused. I started
that sense of purpose,
because I'd lost my identity again. For when you leave the forces, you lose it, and I'd lost it again. I was
It's so important.
position. I had a very good job within the prison service. Done really well. I worked really well, so I'd lost that complete identity, and I started ruminating on something which happened to me whilst in the forces in Northern Ireland.
Right.
But that just took over my life.
Yeah.
And I did start gambling. I had the money because of my pension. I had a lump sum, and I could hide it from my wife, and etc. etc. But there was days where I'd win money and everything was like, get in there, come home, treat the kids.
Yeah.
And there's days where I lost money, and that was a nightmare.
Yeah.
So I decided I needed to sort this out because I didn't want to lose everything.
Yeah.
And I got myself some counselling. I paid for some private counselling, and the woman, she was really good actually, because she'd worked within a prison environment.
Yeah.
She understood my role within the prison service, and she said, look, I think this isn't about grief, because I thought it was all about grief. She said, I think there's a lot more going on than what you're really saying, and there was, but I wasn't going to divulge what happened to me, because you get trained, it's weak to portray what has happened and so on, and so I just said, she said, look, I want to refer you to Combat Stress. Are you okay with that? And I was like, why do you want to do that? I'm all right. I want to sort this problem out, but you've helped me out, blah blah blah. And secretly inside, I was like, probably quite pleased that the counsellor was in with her, but someone else would pick me up, because I was quite scared and vulnerable what was happening next. So I went for an assessment at Combat Stress in Colchester, and the lady said, look, I'll need to get you another assessment at Tirett House, which is where I went. And the day I went there and met the psychologist who actually see me through my journey on 2 different courses, I had it for the same Shaheen on 2 different courses. That was like a weight had lifted. It was still there, but I just was an emotional wreck, because I felt I was in a safe environment where I could talk about what was going on, and I wasn't going into my specific trauma, but there was someone there who understood, and that was, I think that was seeing other forces personnel walking around the building, or ex-forces personnel, and I think that inspired me to open up a bit.
So, I mean, this is really important as well, in terms of, we talk about collaboration, but this is actually a really good example of that, because that was Combat Stress, then I Help for Heroes, and you went on that. Tell me a little bit about Help for Heroes.
So
and then your introduction. That's where ex-forces
come in. So I'd done a 2-week anger management program at Combat Stress. Then I was formally diagnosed with PTSD, and I got offered the 6-week trauma program they do. Put it off twice, and then I got told I had to do it. So I did do it. But that actually, I think, saved my life, if I'm honest. When I was there at the last couple of weeks, I was a bit worried about what I was going home to, because I knew I was recovering, or I was in a better place. I got my family and my kids, but I didn't want to go to nothing. So I contacted Help for Heroes in Colchester. Because I'm a band of brother, because of injuries through service. And they got me a key worker. But unfortunately, because of my time when I finished Combat Stress, which was about 20 months ago, there was a break, Christmas break, so I couldn't have my key worker for 4 weeks. So I was quite vulnerable, but I eventually met my key worker, and then I met another guy at the centre who's ex-Royal Anglian as well, and he does all the business experience stuff and for the Forces Employment Agency. And Tim got talking to me, and we sort of built up a rapport. And one morning, and how I got onto the course was, for the ex-Forces Business Experience course, I was at a coffee morning saying I'd love to go into coffee, and someone said, why? I said, because there's no pressure, there's no KPIs, there's no measurable targets, you go as quick as the machine, simple, and if people don't want to queue, they don't queue, that is it. And it was quite funny, and they were all laughing. I said, seriously, it would be brilliant, because you can talk, blah blah blah. And a gentleman said to me he'd help me, but he phoned me up and then he went off the boil. And Tim phoned me up and he said, you know your coffee thing, do you want to do a business course? He said, we've got a place come up next week, someone had pulled out, and there's an opportunity if you want to do it. And I went, why not, I'll do it. I'll get the time off. And I was literally on the course, and Combat2Coffee was born. I didn't even have a name, I had no slogans, but I had a vision in my head.
So let me just summarise this. You know, you clearly, you know, did an amazing amount of time with the armed forces. You've then gone out and still supported a service with, you know, the prison service, which was quite important. You know, during that time, you've needed some support, hadn't really identified that, but then you've managed to get through with some of the support, whether it's the charities and stuff. And here you are, having a coffee at Help for Heroes in Colchester, threw it out there, you know, I'd like to do something like this. And here you are, just over a year later?
That is literally just over a year later.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the weird thing was, the guy who said he would help me used to drive for the Queen.
Right.
And he was like a guest, and he said, I can help you do this, this, this and this.
Yeah.
So I thought, right, I'm going to take this opportunity. But he fell off the way. For some reason, he disappeared.
Yeah.
And I thought, do you know what? I don't need him.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this myself. And when I got onto the course, as I was filling in the work booklet, I was on my iPad registering with Company's House at the same time. And
it's brilliant.
Because I thought, this has got to happen.
Yeah.
And when it was just mad. How it came about, it was mad. And then we come up with the slogan, and we roasted, toasted and poured by veterans.
Yeah.
So there's a veteran doing some roasting at Freshpack who support me now, and it is poured by veterans, so it's complete end to end.
Yeah.
And I thought of the tagline, and the guy Phil, who was one of the ambassadors delivering the programme, he was like, where did that come from? And I said, I don't know. He said, but that's a brilliant, that was like that's a USP, and that's a selling point, roasted, toasted and poured by veterans.
The amount of people who have started their business and actually registered it actually on a cause, like you, as there's quite a few of them. We've got John Geedon, the Bees, that all happened on the actual course. It's really quite incredible.
And the thing is, because I was so, I've got to get this done, I didn't think about it, so I registered as a limited company first, and I wanted to be a CIC, so I got it the wrong way round. So then I had to go through the conversion to become a CIC, which I've done now, which is quite a lengthy process, but I've learned so much. And if we're going to set up anything else, I know now just to research before I do it.
So what advice would you give to others who are even thinking about, even if it's an idea, because you could have gone on the business course, right, Nigel, and made a decision that actually this isn't the right time for me, or this isn't what you want to do. It's not a foregone slam dunk that you've come on a program and you must start your own business.
No.
I mean, what would your advice be?
Make sure you've got your business idea in your head before you start anything.
Yeah.
Well, I had an idea, but that has multiplied so much since there. So record your original idea and don't try and do too much too soon. And fortunately for me, I've got someone who can rein me in a bit now and sort of say, look, get this stage done and then go on to the next stage, because momentum is such a great thing in business. But that could actually be the biggest obstacle as well, because if you go too fast, too quick, that could be its own hurdle. Yeah,
and I'm a really big advocate of, making sure that you've got a safety net around you, and that's one of the things that was really important. In fact, it was because there was the lack of safety net and, peer-to-peer knowledge exchange and support systems for what other people were doing that made me want to make sure that Ex-Forces Enterprise had that for its people, because it's not just about the finances, it's not just about some tools and knowledge. It's also about, you don't know what you don't know, and what support you need at day one is very different to day 12 months on.
Definitely.
So do you have a support system around you?
Yeah, I do. I'm quite fortunate, I suppose. I've just appointed a gentleman who's become part of the project. Very successful businessman, retired, ex-Royal Navy.
Yeah.
His son is currently the captain of HMS Richmond.
Right.
So he's a serving captain now.
Brilliant.
And Paul, I met him through the Not Forgotten Association. I went to Christmas tea at St
Yeah.
James's Palace, and he was the trustee on my table. I told him, I'm doing this project, blah blah blah, and he lived in Ipswich as well.
Yeah.
He said, well, let's have a chat about it.
Yeah.
And he's just been giving me business knowledge.
Yeah.
And he's had a successful companies.
Yeah.
He remember Puffer Jackets.
Yes, I
he used to own
remember
that
those.
company. So
Yeah.
he's obviously a successful
Yeah.
businessman.
Yeah.
That's but he's sort of just said, look, giving me some ideas. And
Yeah.
for an example, my 14th of October is my year anniversary.
Yeah.
So what Paul has suggested is that we change up, because that's when you should file your accounts on
Yeah.
year one. So you can change every 5 years. You can change your date
Yeah.
for tax filing.
Yeah.
So we're changing it to the end of March.
Yeah.
So we go in
So-
line with the tax year,
Yeah. Yeah.
which then
Just
actually gives us 6 more months.
Yeah.
To make sure that the business accounts are sorted and sustainable,
Yeah.
because that, I can see that can be the biggest hurdle when you're starting up a company.
So that's really important to know that any of our beneficiaries has access to support
Yeah.
and a trusted advisor.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And also, the support that you've got through the team in Birmingham and Dax.
Dax, yeah.
The famous Dax in Birmingham. Now, I don't want us to lose the essence of something that really resonates so much with me, and that is, it's great coffee. It's amazing, and you're only a year in, you're getting it out there, and there's more that can be done. But your business has a real social value. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because it's not just about great coffee.
No, that's just the platform.
Mm-hmm.
That is, the coffee is the platform to the real business. So the original idea, which has sort of grown quite considerably, I wanted to go and work in custody.
Yeah.
With veterans in custody, because the likelihood is, and having seen it, I managed an offender management department in the prison service, so that these guys and girls in custody have post-conflict left the forces, got into a bit of trouble, probably through drugs and alcohol potentially. Then they offend to feed the habit.
Yeah.
They get a little slap on the wrist and they re-offend to feed the habit, and it then gets to a community sentence, and eventually they end up in custody. So there's probably some undiagnosed mental health stuff going on.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do was which we're doing, is going to go into custody.
Yeah.
And we either do a 2 or 3 week program, and the 3 week program consists of getting to know you, action planning. So we will do, I don't know if you've heard of something called the Outcomes Star, Independent Star.
Yeah.
So it looks at the 6 key areas which affect veterans and armed forces personnel. So we action plan. We then do a barista program, so all fun, teaching them about making coffee, what types of coffee bean there are, how to texture milk, how to clean the machine. So they do a proper barista skills program. So that's an MVQ level 2. I'm just registering to be my own education centre.
Great.
So they will formally award that MVQ certificate ourselves. We then do a look forward to release day. So I say, right, wave a wand, what will successfully put you back into the community?
Yeah.
Now, some of that will be unachievable, but actually there'll be a lot on that list probably which we can help achieve.
Yeah.
We then do a first aid course, and then we do some more action planning about linking into their community offender managers to make sure that their licence is fit for purpose on release.
Right.
So they can go into the community knowing that if they're coming to work for the project, they're not got to see their offender manager twice a week.
So and all of those things are so important, because it's making societal change.
Yes.
But it's important also to know that it's buying the product and engaging with the product is the route to making those changes.
Yeah.
And it's so important that, this is a massive plug, Combat2Coffee. It's not just about great coffee, it is about actually societal change, and it's so important to recognise that we can't do the stuff that we do unless there is a profit to be able to do that. So, you know, well done. I'm just, yeah, Nigel, it's just super, super, super awesome. And, you know, the other thing that really resonated with me is that coming to your coffee, mobile coffee, and it's not just about buying a cup of coffee, it's also about having a chat. And you've helped so many people just by having a chat, you know, and that is priceless.
And yeah, and I always carry, when we're doing the projects, I always carry my card, and I have met someone I've worked with someone quite intensely where you have that conversation. Coffee breeds conversation,
yeah.
And if it's good coffee, it does breed conversation. We have a simple A-frame outside one of our mobile places, and we just say, if you're a veteran or a family member and you want to chat, please ask, right? Because that just opens that engagement straight away, and people say, veterans, what? And then you explain the project, because the families are involved in this as well, because when I was poorly, my kids struggled, my wife struggled, etc., etc. So yeah. I've kept the whole project to families as well. But no, you can give your card out, and because sometimes they won't talk to you there.
Yeah.
But if you give them a contact number, it's down to them to call you. But you do get situations where people will talk to you there. And I was saying to you earlier, I had a situation only at the weekend where a lady got quite emotional. She wasn't from the Forces network. She was, but she was full of admiration of the project, and she had some concerns herself, and to obviously now go and getting some help. And I signposted her and told her where she should go to get some support. And her husband was ex-RAF actually.
Well, and there you go.
So she is connected. And,
yes, she is.
After a bit of banter between me and him, he did say this is the most she's opened up in many months.
Yeah.
And I was a complete independent, but obviously because I think some of it, because of my journey, it's a safe pair of ears.
Yeah.
As such.
I get it. I really do get it. And I think it's so important that, you know, for other people to open up, you've got to be that willing to do that yourself, and it does encourage, and it's that domino effect. So amazing and well done. So your final plug, if there's one thing that, you know, if we could have a little magic wand for you, what would that be?
Well, because of the coffee, and we've got a tea coming on board as well, and we're looking at an instant coffee, I'd love to get in front of a buyer with like a major retailer and put the pitch to them, see if they'd go it. And because of the social value aspect, and the donations of every bag sold would represent somebody else and support someone else, that would be good. Let's
see if we can make that happen. The knock-on effect, you know, great coffee and great community engagement. If we can get that little wand and make that magic happen, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
Nigel,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.